So can I please welcome Simon, Julia, and Lewis to come on up. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. I think maybe just to start, I might just pass to each of you to quickly introduce yourselves, say who you are and what you do in a very quick way would be wonderful. So Simon, over to you first.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Simon. I'm one of the two founders of Losange, which is a tech startup created in 2020, specialized in the industrialization and the automation of the upcycling process.
Wow, I speak very good English. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia. I am the co-founder of an ethical brand, and I am also the president of En Mode Climat, which is a coalition of companies. And what we try to do is to pass regulation against fast fashion.
Hi, everyone. My name is Louis Akenji. I work with the Auto Cool Institute as a researcher. We conduct research that supports policymakers and businesses in a transition towards a better society. And fashion is one of the areas we cover.
Super. Lewis, I'd actually like to start with you. You've heard me scene set a little bit already today in terms of fashion waste and why addressing this is so crucial. But could you share a little bit deeper in terms of the scale of the challenge, what you're seeing happening with waste and how it is impacting from both an environmental but also a global equity perspective?
Thanks so much. That's a really good starting point. First thing to note is this is a sector that concerns all of us. I look around and I don't see anyone naked in this room, so that's a really good sign. And it is also something that we're all interested in. So any comment that I make that sounds a bit harsh towards the people doing wonderful work, it is all in the process of getting us better. I'm going to give perhaps two numbers that would give an indication of where we are. Some people estimate, including my organization, that the fashion sector emits close to 10% of climate warming gases. And it's gone under the radar for a really long time. That's one of it. At the same time, about 30% of the clothing that is manufactured every year is probably not worn or sold. So it is not only that we're harming the environment in the process, we're harming it for no benefit at all. And most of this is happening not because it is preordained. It is happening because we've developed a fashion production and consumption model that is essentially very extractive, that does not have any checks and balances, and that has hardly any transparency. So I think, to me, the fashion sector needs to have a conversation with itself around three key things. One of them is, what is the future of the fashion sector in a resource-constrained world? If you're emitting up to 10% and we're getting into a carbon constraints and resource constraints, we know that in the future there's going to be need for some prioritization of the resources and the carbon that we have. Where does fashion fall in this prioritization? What do you need to do as a business to make sure, not as an individual business, but as a sector, to make sure that you continue to exist and that you continue to be as meaningful as you have been historically? So this is the part around the future. The second area it needs to have a really clear conversation is the lack of transparency in the sector. It's a terrible black box to find any data. I can tell you because lots of colleagues of mine have sweated hours, including Heather Roberts, who is somewhere in the crowd here, trying to collect data on fashion. And it's a painstaking exercise. Thankfully, we've got enough to tell us stories. From the EU, as an example, the EU exported about 400,000 tons of waste out of Europe to Africa and Asia in 2003. By 2023, that number had gone up to 1.4 million. So the trends are not necessarily going in the right direction. Another area of transparency where we need to have a bit more reflection is the impact, the relationship between the petrochemical industry and the fashion industry. The fashion sector produced about 8 million tons of plastics in 2019. So all this information to show that we have really clear problems around overproduction, around burden shifting in terms of the waste. And it's a funny thing that for an area where we're all concerned, there's a certain level of anxiety in people just to put on clothing that they actually love. So this points to one really clear thing: the need for leadership in the sector to step up, not just for individual businesses, but for the entire sector to step up and own this problem in a proactive way.
Thank you, Lewis. That's really helps in. Julia, I want to bring us into the solution space a little bit, and sort of with the scene setting that Lewis has so articulately given us there. From your perspective, what is the biggest driver here that needs to be addressed? Like, where do we really need to begin with this?
I think if we look at the big picture, we can see there are two types of waste in the global industry, in the textile industry. First of it is like between the 80s and today, we double our clothes consumption. I can give you the number for France. In the 80s, people were buying like 20 new pieces of clothes every year, and today we are around 50. So we doubled the consumption of clothes, but we were not naked in the 80s. So if we double the consumption, we double also the waste. And before, when the clothes were made in locally, they were quite expensive. I mean, if you want to wear clothes that are made in France, or made in Europe, or made locally, well, you have to pay the European salary, for example, and so they are going to be quite expensive. And so if there's a hole, or if they don't fit you anymore, you will try to repair them, resell them, swap them, because there is still a lot of value in them. Today, most of the clothes are made in countries where the wages are low. So the thing is, it's often more expensive to repair your clothes than to buy a new one. And that's why in France, in Europe, where most of the time when the clothes don't fit anywhere, has a little spot, has a little hole, we are going to throw it away and buy a new one. And that's the root cause of the waste problem. This is why we are over-consuming. It's because clothes are very cheap. Clothes are cheaper than the repair that we could do on that. And why are clothes that cheap? Clothes have been getting cheap when we started to move the industry in countries where wages are cheap, are low. And why the wages are low in this country? Well, because they are not decent. Because the country where our clothes are made, the minimum wage is far below the living wage, as the NGO define it. So why can we afford to buy that much clothes? It's because the people that are making our clothes are not paid decently. And this is the root cause, the root problem of all the problem in the textile industry. It's the reason why we repair, why we don't repair, it's the reason why we overconsume. So if we wanted to really tackle fashion waste problem, we have to tackle first the question of how much are paid the people that are making our clothes. And we should fight for a decent living wage for all the women, because this is mostly women that are sewing our clothes.
Thank you. Awesome. Actually, before I come to you, Simon, Lewis, I just want to throw that back to you, because just when Julia was talking there about the numbers of what we used to consume in the 80s to today, you've done some very interesting work on actually talking about what is a realistic number that we should actually be consuming every year to get within this. But I want to double that with a second question, which is to say, do you think the industry is doing enough today to get us to a place where sustainability and circularity are a reality per the numbers that you believe are necessary?
So to put this in perspective, we are on the way to producing about 2.7 billion tons of climate warming gases, if unchecked, by 2030, right? And this is all the individual purchases that are going on, but also a significant amount of it is the amount of wasteful production that is happening. Is the industry doing enough? I have a very simple and painful answer to this: no. Is there an awareness of it? Yes. Is there a lot of indication or pretense at doing things? Yes. I get quite heartbroken when I talk to designers and small industry, small actors in the industry who go, they're doing all the right things, and I go, yeah, that's true. But as a sector, it's not adding up, right? So it's not individual business here, it's sector-wise. The estimate we've made at the Institute is that if everyone, I'm just going to keep it a bit general here, if you buy more than 5 items of new clothing a year, you've exceeded your limit. That is required to stay at the 1.5 degree target that all countries are aspiring towards. Why does this 5 include? The question I always ask, what does it include? Does it include underwear and socks and so on? No, it's not. And this number is especially important because it is from an equitable perspective. On the one hand, we have a global north, people like you and I mostly, that are buying tons of clothing, incredible numbers of clothing a year. And then we have another part of the world that is sort of hardly even able to afford for itself, where the carbon budget for this particular part of the world is so low. So we have a situation where we're exporting the problem. We overconsume. When we've worn it once, we ship it to another part of the world, and then so we can create room to buy even more.
I tell you, so I tried buying only 5 items off the back of their research in 2024, and I did achieve it. But I will say, A, it was very hard, number one, but B, I cannot tell you how much I learned about my own industry in terms of how your engagement and feeling and enjoyment of fashion changes when you restrict yourself with what you buy. So I really recommend everyone give it a go. Aim for 5. It's a very good aim. It's really challenging, but it is an incredible experience. It takes us back to creativity, which was great. Simon, I want to bring you in. Your work is about valuing what already exists. Very much what we're saying here is hugely necessary from a solutions perspective. You have this as an active solution in the market. Can you talk to us about what you're doing, what all it is?
Our approach is actually very complementary with what Julia and Lewis just said, mostly because we have to buy less clothes, but we also have to produce them differently. As you may all know, the clothes that we are all wearing today, they have been produced the same way. We have cut it into fabric roll that we have been created by extracting virgin resources. But what most people doesn't know is that this process of creating a new materials in fashion is the first emission subject, because 92% of the CO2 emission emitted during the production process of a clothes is actually coming from the creation of the fabric roll only. So in order to reduce the CO2 emission and also to increase the part of the product that we could value locally, we have to think the production process differently. And this is actually what the upcycling is about. It's a very different kind of approach than recycling. You have been probably heard a lot of recycling in fashion at this event, and in general, recycling in fashion is very complicated for a lot of reasons. This is not the subject here, but it's a very, very interesting one. Now, upcycling is very different. The upcycling process is very simple to explain, much harder to scale. The process is you take a clothes, you cut inside of it pieces of pattern that then you assemble to create something new. So this is a very direct approach of valuing the product, but it's very complicated to implement, mostly because the production process is the same everywhere, and the machine that cut the clothes have been created to cut inside fabric roll. So in order to cut inside of fabrics, inside of garments, of products, you have to think differently, and this is why we created Losange 6 years ago. We are a tech startup that aimed at creating the first automated line that cuts inside the clothes the pieces that are then assembled to create something new. And we are doing this for major brands and big groups in fashion, mostly because they want to implement a circular solution inside of their production process, but they want to do it in a profitable way, obviously. And this is why upcycling is interesting, because it's a solution that can reduce the CO2 emission, increase the part of the product that can actually be valued, but also bring profitability to the brand that wants to implement it. And this is the job that we have been doing the last 6 years, mostly searching and investing in research and development to see how we can automate it and industrialize this circular process.
So let's just talk a little bit there about industrializing it. Like how possible, or maybe how difficult is it to get this to industrial scale? And also within that, how important do you think it is that we go from managing waste, as is so often the case, to thinking about preventing it upstream?
The industrial subject is the most interesting one for us because if you don't industrialize this process of production, actually if you don't industrialize any circular way to produce, there will be no ways in which you could be able to challenge the classical way and the linear production that we can see in textile, but also in a lot of industries. So the industrialization is how to reach the economical units that the brands are looking at when they want to produce something new. And if you can provide a very strong economical units also by bringing some performance in the ecological way, well, then you have probably answered all of their question. But to do that, the answer is not quite simple because you have to think it as an ecosystem. The fashion industry is mostly a subcontractor system when you have a lot of people working for a lot of things everywhere. And so in order to implement such way to produce, which is a complete change of paradigm, because instead of cutting inside fabric roll, you are cutting inside of jeans, inside of sweaters, inside of t-shirts. So this is brand new. You have to explain it to the brand. You have to explain it, so how to do it, how to implement it. You also have to invest a lot in research and development in order to create those machines that will bring then the profitability that they are looking at. But also you have to work a lot with the sorting center. Just like Lewis explained before, most of the things that are sorted today in France and in Europe are not staying in the country. They are just sending away in Asia, in Africa. But we have a lot of solutions to do something about it. And here, upcycling is a solution. Recycling is another one. They are all complementary, but you have to bring the whole ecosystem to answer the same challenge, which is valuing what already exists and reducing the CO2 emission of the sector.
Super. Thank you. Julia's going to do a dance for us in a second, I think. I want to come back to you, Julie. Your work, as you mentioned at the beginning in your own introduction, is very heavily in the advocacy space and thinking about regulation to indeed stop the fast fashion model in France and ultimately support or create the conditions, if you will, for a new model for this industry and for new responsible businesses like Simon's to thrive. Can you contextualize for people in the audience who may not know what this regulation is, and also update us as to where it's got to today?
Yeah, maybe I can tell you why, as a company, as a coalition of companies, we started to ask for regulation. It's because we tried the other thing before. We tried the consumer power, no? That's what we believed a lot before. And then we saw that a lot of disaster, from Nike having children working in their factories, to the Rana Plaza, to most recently the Uyghur, did not change anything in the fashion paysage. So we understood that consumer power was not enough to transform fashion industry. The second thing we believed in is company, fair company, ethical company, would change the industry. So I built an ethical fashion brand, and it's going well. I built it like almost 10 years ago, but I must admit that my brand being ethical and doing well is not changing anything in the fashion industry globally. I mean, since I started, ultra fast fashion also arrived in the market, and now Shein is the first clothes sailing brand in France. So if consumer power doesn't work, if having fair and ethical company is not changing either the entire paysage, what we must do is we must change the law. We must constrain all the company to have better practices. And if the problem is overproduction, we have to tackle overproduction by regulation. And so So when we realized that, we gathered together with a lot of French companies in France, brands and factories, and we thought and we were like, so what is driving overproduction, overconsumption, and what's driving it? We are going to ask for a law to stop it. So the first thing that is driving overconsumption, we have seen it before, is the low price. We buy a lot of clothes because clothes are not cheap. And you can buy, if you're in Paris, it's cheaper to buy a t-shirt than to buy a beer. You're in Paris, so you can make the experience by yourself. This is the first reason. And the second reason we are buying that much clothes is because the fashion industry makes us want something new over and over. When, like 50 years ago, brands had like 2 collections a year. One when it's cold, one when it's hot, no? And then brands like Zara arrived, and there was like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, 50 collections a year. And we were like, whoa, this is madness. That was the rise of fast fashion. And now there's ultra fast fashion, and it's like there's 10,000 new products every day on a platform like Shein. So this creation of novelty and this infinite choice, that's what makes us buy more and more clothes. So we worked with some deputy in France, and we proposed a fast fashion law, which is putting prime and penalty on these 2 pillars of fast fashion, low price and novelty, creation of novelty for the brand. Largeur de gamme, I can tell you in France. And also forbidding advertising for ultra-fast fashion law. So the law is has been quite successful, as it has been voted at the unanimity in the 2 chambers of our parliament. I'm not explaining the detail, but let me tell you that it's not that easy to have a unanimity vote on an ecological law. And this law passed because we managed to demonstrate that the fast fashion was a problem not only for the climate, not only for social people that are making the clothes, but also for economy. I mean, in France, fast fashion is destroying job, values, and so on. And when we managed to demonstrate that to our politics, they all voted the law. But now it's stopped. The law is paused because it has to be reviewed by the European Union, and we have to re-vote it a last time. And in the meantime, all the fast fashion and ultra-fast fashion lobby have been awakened, so they are trying to stop the law. But normally, the last stage of the law should be here before summer. So give us some strength so we manage to pass this law totally and to stop fast fashion and ultra-fast fashion.
Absolutely, and I mean full credit to you and the amazing team of people that have been pushing this forward, because I can imagine it's lots of additional voluntary hours on things, as all of the hard work and sustainability does tend to be. Lewis, to bring the policy work to you, obviously there's lots of policy work for fashion and textiles being done in different parts of the world, with Europe being one of the most significant regions. My question to you is, do you think that this policy work that's being done, beyond obviously what's happening in France, has the possibility to ultimately shift the amount of waste we are seeing, or indeed the challenge of volumes in this industry?
First of all, can I just say I love your work, so thank you very much. And you're so small, so.
Same from you.
Do we need regulation? Yes. So what we're beginning to see is that I'm going to make a caricature, 2 camps here. There's a very traditional, established, institutional camp in the fashion sector that wants very little to change, and that it holds quite a lot of sway over the entire industry that is quite resistant to change. There's also a very proactive, sometimes even activistic camp that wants a lot to change, that wants to update things in keeping with the times. Where we are now in the industry is quite evident in the nature of the problems that we see. But ultimately, what is resulting from this is that those that undertake to have ethical businesses and practices lose your business advantage because there's an uneven play field. So what we're hoping is that regulation somehow provides constraints across the entire industry, but also incentives across the entire industry such that organizations or businesses like yours do not lose their advantages. What we're asking for when you're thinking about policies beyond just what is happening in France is a number of things. We've passed similar policies to address packaging, to address electronic waste, to address batteries in EVs. So the EU and lots of the world has a lot of experience now in how to make producers feel a bit more responsible for the waste that is coming out of their processes, what we sometimes call extended producer responsibility. I'd like to say at the Hot or Cool Institute, we've put out a number of policy briefs just in the last couple of days. Please go to our website, hotorcool.org, sorry for this shameless plug-in, and check out the deep dives and the policy messages that we have there. But there are 5 key things that I think we need to emphasize when you're designing this set of policies. 1, in an age where we have a lot of social commerce, a significant amount of purchases are being done online through social platforms. Who really is the producer? Is it the brand owner? Is it where it's manufactured? What about the so many small producers that add up to significant volumes? How do you identify, how do you define the producer in this law so that they take responsibility? 2, given that a lot of the labor that is involved in manufacturing is happening in other parts of the world and we're just having the benefits here, how do we compensate for that? And how do we make sure that the tightening the screws here also has a positive impact in Bangladesh and other parts of the world? 3, can we stop thinking of the solution to fashion as just being recycling and donating second-hand clothes, but looking upstream at production and designing of extractive processes across the sector? 4, can we think of an approach where fashion and fashion leadership have stopped exporting constantly to other countries where the waste, the benefits are enjoyed here, the waste is shipped abroad, and the impacts are over there. So we have a lot of this that have been put out, and we think right now, I'm in a situation where, at a personal level, I've spent a lot of time being quite mad at the fashion sector, which I do love because it's quite obvious to them what is going on and they're refusing to respond. That, you know, there's a sort of capture now where I'm thinking, how do we even invite or involve them in the policy design processes in a way that is not destructive? The number of lobbies walking around in Brussels is just incredible. But at the heart of it, the fashion sector needs to have stronger leadership. It needs to be a lot more proactive rather than just waiting for legislation all the time. We're not going to constantly be doing legislation. A lot more proactivity for a creative industry is needed here.
Thank you. And if you hadn't plugged your papers, I was going to do so on your behalf. So, Simon, to bring it to you, one of the points that Lewis just made was around the labor side of things and how do we support workers, particularly in some of these garment-producing nations, as we transition to new models and to circularity. And I wanted to bring that to you because it is so often used as a bit of an argument from the industry that we can't produce less new clothing because of the workers that are in there. And I think from a government standpoint, we also often hear the same, that obviously we need to protect economies and livelihoods that are obviously supporting this industry, albeit, as Julia explained to us, obviously with very, very low wages. From your side, how do you counter that argument that it's going to mean less jobs in different markets around the world by us moving into these new business models for circularity?
I think that just like when every industry just have been through a lot of changes and revolution inside of their industry, the jobs did not just disappear, they just changed. As for us, I think that the work we are doing toward the circular production is just making new jobs. At Losange, we have created the facilities in France, and we have more than 30 people working here, just with the upcycling process for brands. And so, Julia, with the amazing brands Loom, they have created jobs, but just in a very different kind of way. So I think that there will be no replacement on the fashion industry. I think that you will not have jobs disappear if you just change the way we do it right now. just like we mentioned, we have just to see the value of the product with another eyes, with another view, because you will probably have less products, but it will be probably more expensive because it will have more quality. So the value and the economy of the whole sector will not dramatically change from day to another. So I think that yes, it's just a new point of view. It's just a change of paradigm, and that we have to embrace it as a sector, because the answer is obviously not individuals. It's the whole ecosystem that has to change and that has to evolve in the way it has been always. Probably the sorting center, the manufacturers, the brands, the groups. Everyone has to implement circular solution, but also work together, because if you work in a silo, there will be no solution that could arise, and we have seen it a lot in the last years. Every time there is a huge collaboration with the circular solution, the profitability is there and the jobs are kept. So I think that yes, just like a lot of industry have been through this, the circular way in fashion is just going to change the way we look at it. It's not going to be somehow destructive for the sector. It's just going to be different, and obviously in a very, very good way. So.
And if you could name one thing from policy that would support your work, what would that be?
I think that for our work specifically, the things that could change everything is how we look at the sorting center today. Because just like we explained it before, the whole economy of the sorting in France and in Europe is mostly based on the fact that we can send most of the things that we have sorted elsewhere abroad. So yes, I think that the first thing that we have to tackle, and at Losange we are very, very involved in all of the French and EU regulation toward the sorting centers approach. So yes, I think that the first work that I will see in the regulation sector will be to tackle the issues of the sorting today.
We are at time, and I'm very aware of that, but I am going to steal back the 3 minutes that Hasna left out, and I'll just ask very, very quickly to each of you, if you could use one word, or say one word or sentence, please. What do you each think is the single biggest thing that we should be focused on to drive change in the fashion industry today, and from who? I'll work down the line, so Simon, you first.
For me, I would say industrialize the circular process.
Thank you.
I would say living wage for people working in textile industry.
I would say address overproduction.
And I would say all three of these things. Thank you very, very much.